this journey to the cross, we saw yesterday how Jesus had just been arrested, betrayed by Judas, and now he begins to face some more questions. Jesus gets taken to the high priest, and Peter follows him at a distance. Now, you may remember from yesterday, Peter had declared there was no way he would ever disown Jesus. There's no way he would stop following Jesus. Peter sits with the guards and warms himself by the fire. And the chief priests and all these people are looking to accuse Jesus. They're making false accusations of him, testifying falsely against him, and wanted to find things to trap him with, things to hold against him. And as the high priest stands up and asks Jesus, "Are you the Son of God? Are you not going to answer the questions that are being brought against you, the charges that are being brought against you?" Jesus remains silent and does not answer. And then again the high priest asks him, "Are you the Christ? Are you the Blessed One?" And Jesus says, "I am." Wow. Now this is a moment when they can try and say what they want to him. The high priest tears his clothes. "Why do we need more witnesses?" he says. "You are blaspheming now. You are saying things against God." They all condemned him, worthy of death. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, "Prophesy, say who hit you." And the guards took him and beat him. And so now, Peter, who's followed at a bit of a distance, you may remember what Peter said yesterday. That Peter had said, whatever else happened, if everyone else fell away, he would still follow Jesus. What do you think happens to Peter now? What's the next moment for Peter here?
So, the next bit of the story is Peter denying Jesus. Now let's rewind for a moment. Earlier in chapter 14 of Mark, Peter says that he will never desert Jesus, that he will always be faithful to him. And Jesus says, "No, Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the cock crows. You will desert me just as the rest will." And Peter's like, "Not in a million years, Lord, never will I do that." So then we go to Mark chapter 14, verse 66. And Peter's just hanging around in the courtyard, and a servant girl comes up to him and says, "Oh, you're a friend of Jesus, aren't you?" Peter's like, "Jesus who? No, don't know anyone called Jesus." And then a little bit later he goes out to a gate and someone else says to him, "Yeah, I've seen you around, Jesus. You're one of the people who hangs around with my Lord." And he's like, honestly, mate, don't know what you're talking about. Don't know any Jesus." A little bit later that evening, a third person says to him, "Are you sure, mate? I'm pretty sure I've seen you around Jesus." And he goes, "I swear by God, but I do not know Jesus. I don't know what you're talking about. It's all rubbish. I have no idea who this Jesus is and have nothing to do with him." As soon as he stopped talking, the rooster crows. And his heart is broken. He's just realised that Jesus' prophecy has absolutely come true. And even though he swore he wouldn't, he's denied and deserted Jesus just at his time of need.
So Peter has denied Jesus at this point. Jesus has been arrested. And he's been questioned. And now he stands before Pilate. Pilate, the Roman governor. Or the man they put in charge there, in charge of keeping the peace in the area. And he asks him the question, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus says, "It is as you say." And Pilate is very confused here. He really could do without all of this. "Why are you dragging me into all this, into all of your disputes?" he says. Or perhaps he's thinking that anyway. And so Pilate says, "I can find nothing against him. I find nothing against Jesus. Why have you brought him before me?" And Pilate can see what might happen. There could be an uprising. People could get very angry. And if we think back to Palm Sunday, these were people who were cheering for Jesus only a few days before. And now they're calling for him to be crucified. And Pilate, he's wondering what's going to happen. How can he keep control of the crowd? Now it was custom to release a prisoner at this point. At the Passover, to release one of the prisoners. And so he leaves with a choice. He presents with a choice. Well, I can release Jesus, who you brought before me now, or Barabbas. Now Barabbas, he'd been involved in trying to bring down the government. He was a criminal, a murderer. And he says, which one do you want me to release? And the crowd are being whipped up and encouraged to call for Barabbas to be released. And they cheer for Barabbas. Release him and crucify Jesus. Now Pilate can see this is even worse. If he releases Jesus, this crowd are going to get even more angry. So in the end, rather than make the difficult decision, Pilate just washes hands of this. Washes hands of Jesus. Right, he releases Barabbas and would hand Jesus over to them to be crucified.
The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is, the Praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spat at him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him.
A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country. They forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it, and they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was the third hour when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 robbers with him, one on his right and one on his left. And the scripture was fulfilled which says, "He was counted with the lawless ones." Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "So, you are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Come down from the cross and save yourself." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Christ, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe." Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him.
where Jesus has been to the cross, has died on that cross. You might ask the question, why this all had to happen? What had caused all of this? We've seen the journey following Jesus through Palm Sunday, and now we come to the end on Good Friday, or what seems like the end. As we'll look at on Saturday and Sunday, this of course was not the end. Jesus dying on the cross was not the end. But why did this have to happen? The three-letter word on the wall there, sin, describing the things that we've done wrong. When we think back to the very beginning of the Bible, and Adam and Eve, and sin coming into the world, it says here, because of our disobedience, God's beautiful creation was spoiled. Into the world came death, selfishness, hatred. The effects of this are still felt in our world through wars, sickness, and the environmental crisis. If we're honest, all of us have done things in our lives that are wrong. It is because of the things that we've done wrong that we need Jesus. We need to receive God's forgiveness through Jesus dying on the cross. It had to be Jesus who went to the cross. Jesus was a man who lived a completely sinless life, obeyed God completely. He showed that obedience when he went to the cross. Because all of us in our own sinful way are unable to come before God, unable to be presented perfectly before God. So all the sin, all the things that we've done wrong was laid on Jesus as he went to the cross. And we call this day Good Friday because it was through that we could receive salvation. As Jesus went to the cross, all the things we've done wrong, we can think today, all of us, the things we've done wrong in our lives, all of that was placed on Jesus, and he went onto the cross. He died in our place. It was God's perfect plan to bring salvation for all of us. The person to die on the cross had to be someone who lived a perfect life. And that was Jesus, living a life without sin, and went to the cross because of God's love for you and for me. And as we think on this Good Friday, we think of all the events that have happened over the past few days, the journey to the cross, as we've called it, and it arrives at the cross with Jesus being nailed to that cross. By trusting in Jesus, we have that confidence and that assurance that death is not the end. And although we've come to that journey where we've arrived at the cross, this was not the end of the journey. We'll hear a little bit tomorrow, a little bit on Sunday, about what happened. This may have seemed like a complete defeat for Jesus, but in reality it was the greatest victory of all. The victory over sin and death. And that victory was to come. But on this Good Friday we remember God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son in Jesus, and that whoever believes in him shall not die, but have eternal life.